Questions? Well, we don't, I mean, we've said many times that we don't count it till it shows up in Tiberius. But the projections that the feds put out on the call yesterday were, especially with respect to J&J, which I've been talking about for a long time, were really encouraging, both for the very end of March and for the month of April. And as everybody knows, J&J is a single-dose vaccine, which means for all intents and purposes, if you get a significant number of those, you can dose people once and be done. Whereas with Pfizer and Moderna, it's a two-shot trip, and that's just different with respect to both capacity to deliver it and the speed with which you can move it around. The other thing I would say is that we are not the only state that was encouraged by the news on that call yesterday. And there are many states that both yesterday and today have started to put markers down for where they plan to be over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks. And I do think for many of us it was a function of the fact that not only did we get good news on the J&J piece, but also we've seen a significant increase in support from the feds over the past few weeks for both the CVS program, which, I mean, 105,000 doses has got to be almost double what they were doing 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, and it was a 17% increase.
Yeah, so, and in addition to that, we're now up to about 170,000 first doses of Pfizer and Moderna, which is a reasonably significant increase from where we were a month ago. Well, keep in mind that the way we think about this is state-specific, not national, because there are a lot of other places the doses go nationally that aren't part of the world that we operate in. But I think we are going to see hundreds of thousands of doses, yeah.
Governor, this is a...
Well, I mean, the first thing I did when we got off the call was just work to confirm that other people were hearing the same kinds of numbers. I called a number of the other governors and said, did you guys just hear what I heard? And I think for the most part, many of us are really enthusiastic about where this is going to be going come the end of the month and the beginning and middle of March, or excuse me, April.
Governor, this is a significant milestone, and you've been through a very tough year. Could you take stock of where we stand now that everybody in Massachusetts knows when they can get this shot in their arm? How should people feel about it?
Well, I think most people have done in Massachusetts, which is what I know best, I think most people in Massachusetts have done all they can do to work their way through the past year. I certainly believe the arrival of not one, not two, but 3 vaccines that are all deemed to be enormously effective like 100% effective at eliminating hospitalizations and death in such a short period of time is not only a wonder, but also a real sense of hope for people. And the one thing I would say in addition to that is we do need to be vigilant and keep our guard up with respect to COVID generally, especially as the weather gets nicer and all the rest, between now and the time that we can get everybody vaccinated. I mean, I take a lot of comfort in the fact that 75% of the people over the age of 75 in Massachusetts at this point are vaccinated, and that around 2/3 of the people over the age of 65 are vaccinated, and that many people who work in congregate care of one kind or another and who live in congregate care have been able to get vaccinated, and that we have a path forward here that is defined based on the information we got from the feds about supply, that people can look forward to getting their opportunity to get the shot in the arm. But it's going to be important for us to continue to be vigilant between now and the time we get there. I guess I put it in two ways. I would say the first thing we're going to try and do here is make sure that everybody who wants to get vaccinated can get vaccinated, right? Can pre-register, and based on the eligibility dates, we'll start to hear from us, or may hear from their clinician, or may hear from the community health center they go to, or may be able to book an appointment at CVS or one of the other locations over the course of the next several weeks and months. The question mark about the people who don't think or are hesitant about getting vaccinated, I certainly think a big part of the money that the feds put out, that Secretary Sutter's talked about, which is going to go to, in Massachusetts anyway, those 20 communities that have been most disproportionately hit, which have many folks in their population who are justifiably hesitant and nervous about the vaccine. The goal is going to be to try and convince a lot of those folks to come get vaccinated. I think sites like this, in a place like Brockton, make an enormous difference with respect to people's ability to sort of step forward and get vaccinated. But I think we all think we have a lot of work left to do on that one. The one positive I take about hesitancy from all the polling data I've seen is the number of people who actually say just flat out they don't want to get vaccinated is reasonably small. It's like a single-digit number in most of the polling data I've seen. But I have seen polls where a lot of people say, I don't want to go first. And so my hope is, as we continue to vaccinate people and as we continue to make it possible for others to get vaccinated, that some of the people who just don't want to be first will take a look at their friends and their neighbors and their coworkers and their families and others and say, you know what, I'm okay with this. Well, I'd say, so I'll start with the back half of that first, which is that educators at this point are getting vaccinated in many locations all over the Commonwealth. We get reports on this pretty regularly from a lot of our colleagues in municipal government. I think what was the first part of the question? I think what we'll probably do is continue to distribute based on the guidelines that we've established previously, which is, you know, if you're not performing at a certain level, you need to get to that level. And one of the things about the program we've put in place over the course of the past couple of months is it is one of the most efficient, most expansive vaccination programs in any big state in America. You don't get to become number one in the number of doses you're delivering per capita among the 25 or 26 states that have more than 4 million people without having a very expansive and very efficient and well-operated vaccine delivery system. And part of that is driven by metrics. And those metrics are quite clear. If you're not delivering doses and administering doses in particular time frames associated with when you get them, you will be held accountable for that. And I think that decision that we made a couple of months ago, because we do think we are in a race against time. People want to get vaccinated. People want to have an opportunity to get vaccinated. And we want to get people vaccinated so that fewer and fewer people get sick. But a big part of this program's success is driven by the fact that if you're a participating entity in it, we expect you to perform at a certain level. And we have folks who are delivering at over 100%. Well, first of all, Berkshire County is second only to Barnstable County in terms of the percent of its population that's actually got a first dose. Western Mass, which is a regional collaborative, has been doing extremely well. The three counties next to Berkshire County are performing at about the same level in terms of first dose as the rest of Massachusetts. And I think what we will probably do to begin with is try to make more doses available to the sites that we already have that are up and operating. Because one of the things that's also pretty clear about this process is the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the more familiar you become to the community. And in addition to that, if you want, which we do, people who are hesitant to want to get a vaccine, the best place for them to go is to some place that some other family member, friend, coworker, neighbor has also gone to and had a positive experience at. So goal number one is probably going to be to put more doses into the operation that's already been successful. Go ahead, Steve. This is a healthcare facility, so they're a little different than the rest of, yeah. I think we made an announcement about phase 3, step 2 last week, and many of those things become effective next week. And some of them the week after that and the week after that. The two things we're going to continue to pay attention to with respect to all the decisions around rules and guidance are going to be how fast do we get people vaccinated and what's going on with respect to our case counts and our hospitalization rates. As I said in my remarks, our case counts are down dramatically from where they were in January, and our positive rate is down from where it was in January, and our hospitalizations are down from where they were in January. But, you know, as I said, we're anxious to vaccinate people as quickly as we can, but we're going to continue to pay a lot of attention to the stuff that's going on with respect to COVID in the Commonwealth and in the community generally, and that will inform decisions we make about other stuff. On vaccines, you mean? Yeah. No, I mean, many of the places that are currently part of the delivery system are doing more doses. Remember, when you start bringing in the second dose and laying it on top of the first dose, you know, many of these folks have been able to continue to deliver the same number of first doses, which means for all intents and purposes, they're doing twice as much vaccinating as they were doing when they got started. Almost all of them will tell you that once you do this for a while, you get better at it. It doesn't take you as long to register people, to run through their attestations, and to get them situated and vaccinated so that they can then be observed before they leave. And I think in many ways, that has been very helpful in boosting our vaccination rates. And the provider community would say the same thing. I'm sure you would say that too. And I know you would, because you said it when we were walking around. How much what? Well, the thing that was most exciting for me, and I've said this before, is the J&J piece. I mean, this is no offense meant to Pfizer and Moderna. Thank God they were there in December. But a one dose that doesn't require the deep freeze is just a really big deal in terms of everybody's ability to significantly increase our ability to fully vaccinate people. Remember, we've done 2.6, almost 2.7 million vaccinations at this point in Massachusetts, and we have dosed fully, right, a little under 1 million people. So that just speaks to how big a difference it is to be able to have a single dose vaccine in terms of how fast you can get people vaccinated. I'm not going to be, I would say that I think for us as an administration, there are three things that will continue to occupy our time in a big way with respect to where we are now. Number one is getting everybody who wants a vaccine vaccinated, period. And we just have to continue to push on all of that until that time. The second is to continue to make sure that we have a transmission rate in Massachusetts that's low enough to start thinking about this as an endemic instead of a pandemic. And the third is we have a ton of work to do to sort of regroup and rebuild an economy that for many people has been just brutal over the course of the past year, and to try to help those folks either find a way back into the work they were doing before or to find a path forward for them into and to work somewhere else. And then the final thing I'll say is that, to truly get to the point where we feel like we're, sort of behind this, so many of the sort of activities of daily life need to start to feel a little more normal. And my view on that is that, that's months from now. So I don't think I'm going to relax until we get a lot farther down the road than we are today. Say again? I think 4 million is about the right number. I mean, it would be great to have more, all right? But when you get to the point where 4 million people have been vaccinated and 560,000 people had the virus, and hopefully, once you get to that point, almost everybody knows somebody who's been vaccinated, and hopefully that will encourage some of the late arrivals to just do it, which I think would be good.
Governor, can I ask you about MBTA safety? There was a derailment yesterday in Wellington. Now the T is pulling all these brand spanking new trains off the rails. Are you concerned about this situation?
Well, of course. I mean, any derailment is a cause for concern, especially one that has passengers on. Thankfully, they were going really slow and nobody was hurt. It'll take about 3 weeks for them to figure out what the actual cause of whether it was a track issue, and people working on the track. So that question number one is, was the work that was being on the track have something to do with this? But I think the cautious thing for the T to do is to take the trains off and do a full-blown inspection of them, as well as an inspection of the site, figure out what it is that caused it before they would put the trains back on. I think that's the right way to handle it.
Are you concerned about that contract at all? It's been so slow, lots of delays in delivering the trains. Nicer that they're being built in Springfield, but
the pandemic, we should all remember that the pandemic really mucked up a lot of transnational and international commerce of all kinds, and because of that, we lost a significant amount of time on that project. About 850,000. Part of the issue associated with this depends to some extent on not just supply, but also how many people actually want to get it. And I think in many ways for us, it seems like about 2 weeks, a big chunk of the group, whatever that group might be, seems to get, you have this huge rush where all of a sudden, you had nobody in a category, and then you had 50, and then 60%, 70. And then it gets pretty slow after about 2 weeks. So part of the reason why these are 2-week intervals is that seems to be about how long it takes to get to the point where you've gotten everybody who is really anxious through the front door.
What's your everybody able in the last?
Pardon me?
What's your everybody able in that last?
That's a hard question to answer because I don't know the answer to the supply question. What I would say is that the current framework we're operating on here is pretty consistent with the one we started with in December. I think that's good news. And if the feds deliver more supply, we'll be able to make it happen a lot faster. And the J&J thing is a big deal. People should not underestimate the importance of 1 dose versus 2. I think the way to think about it is there are going to be 3 elements that factor into your appointment. The first is going to be eligibility, right? Are you in fact eligible? The second will be when you signed up, and the third will be the availability within a reasonable area, geographically, for you to get an appointment. And that mixture is basically going to drive the way appointments get parceled out by the system. I plan to pre-register, and we'll see what happens, because I will be eligible. I'm very excited about that. Thank you, everybody, and thanks again to Brockton.